Awesome. So thank you, Jazandra. Really excited to interview you today. So I'm Sue AnderBois with the Local Return. Really excited to interview Jazandra with Southside Community LandTrust. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Jazandra Barros. Yes, I'm the community outreach coordinator at the Southside Community Land Trust, and uh, I'm just a local person.
Can you tell us a little bit about Southside?
Yeah, so I started working at Southside in 2018. I joined the staff as the community outreach coordinator, and really my position was created kind of in conjunction with the land trust purchase of a building that is on Broad Street. And the organization bought the building in 2017 and planned to move all of its operations to that building. But the building, it's a pretty old building, so it needs a lot of renovations. And so in like addition to like moving all of like our physical like office space to that building, the land trust is also building a small food hub there. And so we're gonna have a facility there for the farmers we work with to do wash, pack, and storage. And then also having a few food businesses kind of co-locate in the building. So I was hired to work like on that portion of it, recruiting potential business owners to come and share the space with us.
Oh, that's so.
Um,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah. I was gonna say, but the land trust, has been around for quite a long time, 40 years this year, and has been mainly, building infrastructure for urban gardens and farms in Providence, Pawtucket, and Central Falls. It has expanded that to like some peri-urban, suburban properties as well as rural. So yeah.
Awesome. Can you tell me a little bit more about like the approach that you're choosing, particularly with the new building on Broad Street? Like, tell me a little bit more about that model, the specifics of the project. Yeah, I just love to learn a little more.
Yeah. So from what I understand, right, coming into the organization is that like the land trust has really been focused really heavily on, infrastructure for growing.
Mhm.
So community gardens, urban farms, and then like that expansion kind of to more, to growing sites outside of the city. But in the same way that like, growing food is a part of dealing with issues of food insecurity and food access. There's also other parts of the food system that, right, like growing is one part of it. And so the same way that the organization has created infrastructure for growing food, there's also that need on different, different parts of that food system, that infrastructure to be built. So 404 Broad, which is the address of the building, will be really just like continuing that trend of like working with folks who are growing food and figuring out ways how do we distribute that food into our community, um, that the food that the folks are growing. And so the project really is kind of centered around the farm to market center. So that's the small aggregation center, wash, pack, and storage, because right now we're in a Victorian house on Somerset Street. So, we have some refrigerators in the basement, and then we also we share some cool bot space at another site in the West End. And so like that's pretty inefficient. We have like about a dozen farmers that we're aggregating food for. Um, and so as that has grown since 2017, when that started, it's continuing to see the trend of like there's more people interested in growing food, they're growing more food. How do we get that food distributed? And so like having a site that's located, in the neighborhood to be able to collect that food and then, do all the processing of it and then move it out into the neighborhood and find ways to distribute it is kind of like the focus and what the organization is really moving towards. And then in the same token, creating opportunities for other folks in the neighborhood, who are business owners who aren't necessarily growing food, but are, selling food, whether it's retail or in a restaurant, or catering or whatever it might be, who are also, processing food in some way. Um, to one, kind of do like some nice market exchange, right? There's like fresh produce on one end, and there's people like selling food in retail on the other end. And then also, the real the real beauty of it is that those folks are like from the neighborhood, connected to the neighborhood, know what folks in the neighborhood like to eat, those kind of things. And so, yeah, really just thinking about what's a good way to create like a small food ecosystem in the neighborhood. Yeah.
Nice. So you kind of mentioned this, but are there other big benefits of the model? It seems like supporting the neighborhood, supporting small scale farmers, connecting, retail and growers, having a more centralized system, like so you're not like running between a Victorian house and a cool bot. Are there other benefits to the new approach, or it's not a really new approach, but to the approach you guys are taking with 404 Broad?
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of it, is that it's not really, we're not recreating the wheel. Like food hubs exist. This is a very small scale version of it, and it really is neighborhood specific. But really, we're just trying to continue to like build infrastructure, right? That supports folks in the neighborhood. So it's not just, food's coming in from somewhere. Like the food is grown here, it's processed here, and then it's distributed here. Folks in the neighborhood are eating this food. And that one, it increases, the benefit is that it increases, on the health side, it's increasing, right, people's ability to access the food that's being grown. And then the benefit is, of course, like farmers being able to be compensated, right, and compensated well. And then continuing to like support small food businesses. So there's also that economic benefit as well.
Yeah. So this project you're still in the middle of, but Southside has been around for a long time. If you had to kind of do things over again, like if you were there at the beginning or if you were there a decade ago, are there things you would have done differently or just things about your model that you would have changed?
Um, you know, it's kind of it's hard for me to say because the organization is older than I am.
Yeah,
So, but
same.
yeah, yeah. So, um, I think one of the things that I've been, contending with in my time, because I am a long time resident. I mean, I was born here in Providence. I grew up in Mount Hope, but my grandfather, the house I'm in right now, was owned by my grandfather, who purchased it in the 70s. And so me and my family, we've been around here for a long time. And there are a lot of other folks whose families have also been here for a long time. And kind of one of the things that I struggle with, and trying to still like figure out, is kind of like, there are a lot of folks who are growing food, who a lot of times are new to the country, new American, coming from refugee and immigrant backgrounds, and that's beautiful. A lot of those folks like have agricultural backgrounds, and so this organization has always really responded to that, that need for them, which is to be able to grow their own food. But one of the things that I see in the organization kind of continues to see, and it's still working and trying to figure out, now, in 2021, is like, how do we continue to engage folks who don't necessarily have agriculture backgrounds? And it's not to say that everybody's going to want to grow food or become a farmer, but how do we continue to engage with residents who have, long histories in the neighborhood, and bring those folks into the fold? Because we're really trying to work to, like, how do we create this community food system where it does really serve everybody? And even if that just means that you're somebody who's just purchasing food, right? But how do you get connected and stay connected and like have meaningful connections with folks in the neighborhood?
Oh, that's awesome. That's really important. Um, I guess, are there things as you've been working at Southside and developing this work, are there things that have surprised you?
I think I'm surprised at how much food actually folks are growing. I mean, I think a lot of times people think of farming on a large scale. And even sometimes when people, talk about like small family farms, a lot of times those people are still farming a lot of acres. But it's really amazing to me to see like how much, folks are growing sometimes on very small pieces of land. And then what that looks like when a number of folks bring their food together, there's actually like a pretty decent, you go to the Wednesday Sankofa Market or Armory Park on Thursday, and like, I mean, it's pretty magnificent to me to see how much food is in the neighborhood. I think, the challenge is like who that food is going to ultimately. But yeah, I'm always amazed to see like and just I don't know, just some of the things that folks are able to grow, even in the community gardens. People are growing turmeric and like ginger, and it's really cool. Like it's really cool to see because I don't ever think about Rhode Island and somebody growing turmeric or ginger. That's just not a thing I think about.
Yeah. Oh, that
Yeah.
is so cool.
Hmm.
Um, oh, one thing that we're wondering, so just thinking about so what you're doing is so amazing and local and in the community. We're seeing at the federal level that there's potentially, stimulus dollars that folks will be expecting, and some of that money hopefully will be coming down to the states and municipal levels. And we're looking at, how can that have the biggest impact in building more just, inclusive, and sustainable local economies? What kind of policies or programs do you think would really benefit the type of work that you're doing, if the state did see some of that stimulus funding?
Yeah. You know, I think one of the things that we're really trying to like understand, and I think that having resources kind of come into our communities, especially communities that have been for a long time just like impacted by just the I don't want to say ignorance, but it in a certain sense it is. But I think seeing folks continue to support on in the same way that large scale farmers, right, are subsidized, right. I think there's a continued need for small diversified growers to be receiving those some of those same levels of support,
Mhm.
um, because it continues to be a challenge. And it's like it's great when you do have an organization like a land trust to support you, but when you don't, um, there's those continued struggles. And I think that seeing that for farmers, but also just food producers in a variety of different ways, ways for those folks to access, capital really, um, would be really great.
Um, and one last question before our lightning round, but what are some examples of the impact that you've already seen from either the work Southside does or the 404 Broad Street project in particular? What are some examples you're seeing already in the community?
Yeah, I mean, we're really excited. We're gonna be in the building, hopefully by the end of this year. We're gonna like keep our fingers crossed. I'm really excited to see what it's really gonna look like when we're in there. But I do know right now, I mean, the pandemic is definitely unfortunate in so many different ways. And so, of course, like I was saying earlier, there has been a lot of focus and shift towards food and food systems that like I can actually see the shift from like 2018, 2019 to like pandemic 2020, and people really shifting and focusing more on food access and particularly around food, food insecurity. And like, we definitely want to.
Oh, Jazandra, you went on mute.
Sorry about that. I got a
Oh,
phone
no worries.
call. But I was saying, we definitely don't want to see that increase, and we want to see folks be able to like be supported or be able to support themselves and make sure that people have access to food. But I think one of the things that has been really interesting is that our aggregation program, um in 2020 saw the biggest revenues it's seen
Wow.
since it started in 2017. And that came from a number of different partnerships. But because people were shifting and focusing towards food and then shifting and focusing towards local food, we saw that increase. And so that's really good. Although, right, we're also seeing the impacts of people facing like higher levels of food insecurity. And so I want to see that continue, right? That continued support and people purchasing and receiving foods that local growers are growing. But I also, of course, want to see like levels of food insecurity decrease as well. um but kind of one of the things that we were able to do was um partner with some folks in Fox Point, and also with Food on the Move. And then we also were funded through Integra. They're the accountable care entity for Care New England. And so they actually funded us to provide vegetable shares to their members. And so all of that kind of had a nice cumulative effect for the farmers in 2020. And so we're hoping to see that continue. Yeah.
Awesome. For anyone who might be watching who doesn't know what Food on the Move is, do you mind explaining your partnership with Food on the Move a little bit?
Sure. So Food on the Move is a food access program through the Rhode Island Public Health Institute. And so, they work in low income, a lot of times with elderly folks who are receiving SNAP benefits, and they have a truck, and they stock that truck with vegetables, and then they pull up to different places. I've seen them at libraries. They pull up to assisted living facilities, different places throughout the state, and people can come down and purchase their food right off the truck. It's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And so
awesome.
they've been a big support for years, purchasing from Southside and the growers.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mhm.
Okay, we're gonna do a quick lightning round at the end. So I'll ask you a few questions and just say, the first thing, that kind of pops in your mind. So the first word or phrase that comes to mind when I say the word local.
Food.
Same. What's the first word or phrase that comes to mind when I say wealth?
Redistribution.
What's your go-to local business that you like to shop at?
Green Tenderfoot.
Mm.
Or they're the Hale Room now
Oh, cool.
in
Cool. I'll have to
Pawtucket.
check that one out. I've been hearing good
Mhm.
things.
Yeah, they're great.
Um, what does community mean to you?
Everything. There's no, I mean, it's hard to sustain. Uh, we're meant to be in community by nature. We're not, we're not individuated species. We thrive and grow in community.
What's something that's happening in Rhode Island right now that excites you?
There's a lot of work being done, and this would be, I would say, nationally, but I think particularly in Rhode Island, just of really, and that's supposed to be like one word or a
Oh
phrase,
no, this
but
can be a whole, yeah.
oh,
Explain.
but there's a lot of folks who are doing a lot of really great work in highlighting Rhode Island's history, and kind of bringing a lot of truth to light. There is actually a report that got put out recently through the City of Providence Mayor's office. It's called A Matter of Truth, and it's a really amazing document. And if you live in Rhode Island, or you're interested in the history of Rhode Island, it's a really, really great piece of work that folks have been working on for a long time. And I think it's going to help shift and shape a lot of the work that we do, particularly around, equity and justice and things like that, and moving policy forward that rectifies a lot of the things that we are dealing with currently, but that actually, are things that come from hundreds of years of inequitable policy and practices.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I just downloaded that this morning to read.
Awesome.
Um,
Yeah.
and what is your current favorite local investment opportunity? So a project or a program in Rhode Island that you'd love to see get funded or get more investment in?
404 abroad. No.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
um, no, I mean, honestly, I do highly like believe in community land trust, the history of community land trust, coming from the civil rights movement. And we actually just had a really good discussion kind of as a staff talking about the history of community land trust. And so I would actually like to see more of them in Providence, in Rhode Island. And I would like to see community land trusts that actually also have the housing piece, 'cause a lot of community land trusts are more focused on housing. And so I'd like to see that. And I would love to see those, what might be kind of the hybrid between like agricultural community land trust and then like with the housing piece also incorporated as well. So yeah, but also just generally in housing and people having like um you know really robust and more like supportive job opportunities, particularly in the food industry. I think that's a challenge, and I think a lot of folks are seeing that now with having issues with hiring folks. But there's a reason why, So I'd like to see definitely those supported and boosted.
Awesome. Are there organizations or people doing some of that work in Rhode Island besides Southside who um, you'd like to mention or raise up?
Yeah, I mean, I would actually like to kind of raise up some of the work on the policy level, particularly with Renew Rhode Island and the Rescue Rhode Island Act. I'd definitely like to see that like get pushed through. And there are a lot of organizations who are in that coalition who are doing, work um, in their own lanes. So, for instance, DARE, Direct Action for Rights and Equality, George Wiley Center in Pawtucket. Yeah, there's a lot of folks, and I would like to see continued support of those, especially those who are BIPOC led.
Awesome. Well, this has been awesome, Jazandra. I'm so glad that you took the time to chat with me today and for all of the really great work that you're doing and that the Southside Community Land Trust is doing.
Yeah, thank you.